Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Boom Comic Source collaboration. Time for DC Spotlight for the week of April 23rd, 2024. Hopefully, you're enjoying this on Rocky's channel, Comic Space Boom! Exclamation point on YouTube. If you're listening to the audio only, hey, great, thanks. You know, maybe you're working out or you're on the subway, driving a car, whatever. We really appreciate you joining. But if you want to see the graphics and the comics and the books that we're talking about and our smiling faces, again, you're going to want to head over to Rocky's channel, Comic Space Boom! Exclamation point on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell so you know when new content comes out. And then, of course, over on the Comic Source channel, where all the other Comic Source content goes out, interviews and the Indie Spotlight, which will be coming back soon. Everybody, don't worry. Again, just do a search for the Comic Source, and you can check us out on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell over there as well. Like I said, audio only, available on the Comic Source podcast feed. So whatever app or platform you get your podcast on, you can just go and search for the Comic Source and subscribe. Apologies, I know we're behind the indie spotlights. Things have been insane for me. Had appliances die. I had somebody back into my car. All kinds of stuff that I'm dealing with. So I was just telling Rocky before we started recording, as much as I hate to do it, I'm like pausing interviews unless it's like something that is really gonna gain a lot of traction. A lot of people want to know about it or what have you. DC's in a little bit of a hiatus right now for interviews anyway. But anybody else that reaches out, I'm unfortunately kind of putting a pause on it right now just because I need to get caught up on some other things. My reading list and notes, those indie spotlights, and even some of my indie reading. Like the first week that I missed, I think it's the first week of April. I've read the books, haven't had a chance to talk about them. And then the second and third week of April, I haven't even read the books yet. Going into this week, again, haven't read the books. Just a lot of life stuff happening, and holidays, family, hanging out this last weekend and what have you. So, but it will be coming out soon. Don't worry, I'll get caught up. I will release the past due episodes as well as the new stuff going forward. So don't forget to leave your comments and your thoughts on the DC books this week in the comments below. Like we mentioned, last week I was asking, or might have even been the week before, I was asking if people kind of agreed with me or disagreed with me on my Nightwing take, like why Nightwing fandom seems to be more united than other fandoms. But yeah, nobody really had an opinion. Nobody said anything. So I wouldn't say I was disappointed, but I would have liked to have heard what some other people thought. So anyway, diving into the books this week. It's a big week, everybody, with 14 titles. That being said, Rocky and I have a lot of overlap in our top books. So there's a lot of these books that we're going to try to not dive too deep in on because they don't make either of our top five. And as our mothers always said, if you don't have anything nice to say, maybe don't say anything at all. So with that being said, one of the books that does make, actually, before I do that, I forgot. Let me throw it over to Rocky and ask you, how was your Easter and what did you think of the DC week?
Well, I think, first of all, thank you. My Easter was great. Had a good time with family and friends, and I hope yours was good as well. Did a lot of did some yard work as well, and yeah, just tidying things up for getting some comic books together because I'm going to Calgary Expo this coming week. It's a very short week for me with Easter Monday being a holiday, and then Tuesday, today, and tomorrow I'll be going to work, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday I'll be in Calgary Expo with with Jeremy Adams and perusing the DC panels, helping Trevor Lankevich. I'll have a professional badge, and so I'm excited about that. Sitting with all other creators, and I get to pretend and delude myself into believing, and I get to live an illusion and live vicariously through actual comic book creators sitting behind the desk, so to speak, where fans will be coming by, and so I'm really looking forward to it. I'm sure I'll get a lot of I'll get a lot of autographs, and maybe I'll be able to get a couple of them free, so I'm not paying $10 for every signature, but we'll see. But I'll
Is that
tell you guys.
what people charge? I mean, I know a lot of people charge, but I feel like five is kind of the standard. I don't know. Maybe it's
Well,
more
I
in
don't know if
Canada.
it's because we're in Canada with our dollar, but thanks to Trump and the tariffs, our dollar's creeping up ever so slowly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
no, it's as high as $10. It's common for a $10 signature for the bigger name creators. That's what it was last year, quite frankly, with a lot of the creators, 10 bucks a signature. And it was just, makes it real easy to me. It's easy because I don't have to drag so many comics because I can't afford to get that many
Oh
signed.
yeah,
And
yeah,
you can't even. It's getting to a point where here you can't even. I can't even. You know, normally I could wait to go to a comic convention and go to the expo and buy the comics there, right? Buy it just to get it signed. But when a 3.99 comic that it's not a key comic is they're selling the comic for $10 and then want $10 for a signature. No, that's common. It's just straight up. I'm all for supporting creators. I am. I get it. It's not. This isn't my first merry-go-round. I get it. I'm just saying it forces me to sort of take a hard look at my budget, and I haven't. And in fact, I know it's been an issue with some creators who've I've been asked directly what the price points should be for selling comic books for indies in Canada because they know our dollars weaker and about how much to charge for because as Canadians we don't feel that our $10 bill should be any worth any less than an American $10 bill, but
yeah.
of course reality sets in and we understand there's a difference, and it makes a difference on our pocketbooks when we go to a comic convention, and we have to address that. But in any event, it's a first world problem. It's a great, it's all good. Looking forward to it, and yeah, this week in DC. Again, you and I did share a lot of comic books in terms of our top five, top six or seven, so to speak, and but overall, there's the ones that there were some ones that were significant misses, but we'll get to it.
Yeah, Summer Superman has kicked off. Superman Day last Friday was, successful. A lot of people talking about Superman is really fantastic. To go back to the signature thing, and just for a moment, like luckily when I started going to cons, same with you. I think people didn't charge, and I understand why they do now. First of all, um, a lot of people take those and resell them, especially when it's CGC. So I totally get that. I'm not the that's not me. That's not what I do, and so. Um, I got a lot of my signatures back when people didn't charge, and my favorite are the people that still don't. They'll sign at least one book for free, or if they personalize it to you, they'll sign it for free. I really appreciate that. I really, really do. Um, but the fact of the matter is, I've got so many signed books now that I don't really like. When I go to a show, I'm not really getting much signed anymore
Yeah.
because I kind of already have signatures from just about everybody, unless they're really, really new. Or a lot of times they'll just give me the signature, and they won't necessarily charge me. Sometimes they do, which is fine, again, because I understand it. But yeah, I do think, like, and a lot of people, I think Mark Wade's one that does this, where the first signature is always free, unless it's CGC witness, and then
Yeah.
he'll ask for donations, or he'll charge like $5 after that, or what have you. I think that's a good way to do it. But I am a little jealous that you're going to get to hang out with Trevor and Jeremy and what have you over at Calgary.
Mm.
Partly because it's starting to get hot here already in Phoenix, so I'm sure you have some nice weather up there. It'll still be on the cooler side. Who other than Jeremy, who we kind of know personally, what other creators are you looking forward to seeing there? Who are the big names?
Oh man, let me just bring it up here quick. There's a whole slew. Let me see here. I would rattle them off real quick. Um, well, Frank Miller's there, Dan Slott, Jason Aaron, uh, Jim Zub, of course, Jeremy Adams, Enid Ballum, he's on the X-Men, Manhunt, Brett Bean, I Hate Fairyland, Rose Besh, she's a cover artist, Cecil Cacciolucci, Nick Bradshaw, Richard Comely, Stephanie Cook, John Delaney, Francine Delgado, John Gallagher, Tom Grummett, Scott Hepburn. He does Minor Threats, so I'm looking forward to meeting
Oh
him because I love
yeah,
Minor Threats. Uh,
yeah,
yeah, Jason Howard, Sam Maggs, Marcelo Mater, Dave McCaig, Don Mateague, John Boy Myers, Dan Parent. He does a lot of Archie stuff. So yeah, Mark Russell's going to be there. Tim Sheridan, I want to meet him. Talk with him about the Green Lantern series that you and I both quite enjoyed. And yeah, and then of course our mutual friend Trevor Zedkevich. He's there. He's got a table with the other all the other big names, so he's quite happy about that, and I'm happy about that because I get the badge with him. So it's
Yeah,
the
that's
money I'm
fantastic.
saving, I'll probably spend on signatures, but in
Yeah.
any event, yeah. So it should be a good time because I think it's a pretty good. It's one of the better years I think for creators, quite frankly, and I'm hoping that they feel so sorry for the Canadian dollar that they'll lower their prices for sketches. But I won't hold my
Yeah.
breath.
Yeah, definitely mention that you and I are friends to Tim because I know him. Tim Sheridan, I know him pretty well. Also, and yeah, Jason Aaron, Dan Slott, Dan and I had a great conversation at WonderCon. Gave me some behind the scenes stuff that about what's coming in Superman. And then again, I hope everybody. The last couple of interviews I did for DC, they had to be written only, so I didn't get to release the audio. So be sure you head over to if you're following the Comic Source
Mhm.
on social media, you'll have seen the links to the articles, but especially the Superman article that I put out
Yeah,
for Superman Day.
yeah.
Um,
It's a really good
it
article.
had
It's a great interview. It's a great article. He interviewed all three: Dan Slott, Joshua Williamson, Mark Wade. It's a great article, well written and very informative. And yeah, I encourage people to go to the Comic Source blog and read it and give it a good read.
Yeah, LRM. It's on LRM online actually. So just go to the Comic Source tab there, or if you're following me on social media, like I said, yeah. So, and just to be clear, like those interview questions, I cleaned them up, the questions and the answers because it was recorded audio, and then I had to clean it up. But those aren't all my questions. It was a round table. So we all submitted. There was like 6 of us, 7 of us, I think. We all submitted questions, and then the DCPR person read them, and then they answered. So those aren't all my questions. And that's why some of the questions were a little bit of repeat, and that's why I kind of cleaned things up or whatever. But yeah, it was really fun. Unfortunately, Joshua Williamson had to leave; he couldn't stay the whole time, so we kind of front loaded it, asking him stuff, and then he left, and then we were just talking to Dan Slott and Mark Wade. But yeah, a lot of great stuff in there, and then there's more stuff that Dan Slott told me it hasn't come out yet because it's a little bit more spoilery. But yeah, I'm really excited for where things are going with Superman. So anyway, let's go ahead and dive into the books. As I mentioned, this makes both of our top five. It comes in at number 4 for me. It's in your top 3. It's Martian Manhunter number 2, written by Dennis Camp. Art is by Javier Rodriguez, including the colors, and the letters are by Hassan Otsman Elhau. And I want to make it clear that color continues to be a very big part of what we see in the art here. Color is so important. Um, and this is not a traditional superhero comic. This is kind of out there. It's weird. It's a little esoteric. So it's a very interesting color palette that Javier Rodriguez uses. And I'll talk more about the colors in just a second because that's where I want to focus on in terms of the visuals. But just a quick word about his line work. This is as clean as I've ever seen him doing line work. In the smaller panels, there tend not to even be backgrounds, and you'll hear Rocky and I a lot of times say that as kind of a negative. God, there's no detail in the backgrounds. It leaves a lot to be desired. It doesn't feel like kind of a real world situation because when you look around in the real world, there's things in the background. But here, when he doesn't put anything in the background, it really, really works. It really, really sells the experience that John Jones, this FBI agent, is having because he's so much in his own head with this. I'll call him an invader. This Martian that is basically sharing his psyche at this point. And we were told this before. Now it's in the book, so it's canon, and you can understand it a little more. Like why Martian? At one point John Jones is communicating with the entity that's in his brain, in his psyche, and he's like, "Well, we've been to Mars. There's no life there." And the entity, explains to him, "It's not that I'm from Mars. Um, it's not a Martian literally. It's a symbol. It's something from Mars. It's alien. It's different. It's out there. It's a concept. It's far away." And he talks about being that there aren't really words that he can use that John Jones would understand to describe how far away he is. Somewhere so distant the universe will burn out before light from Earth can reach it. A place beyond. It's a playground of pure radiant thought. And that, again, really sells this idea of how different, how alien this entity is which again speaks to the visuals that we're getting from Javier Rodriguez in terms of the lighter backgrounds. I mean, there's one scene where uh, Jones is crossing a street, and he's so overwhelmed by the thoughts and the images that the entity is kind of sharing with him that he crosses against the light, and all of a sudden all the cars have to stop and they're all honking at him or what have you. And you'll notice that in that panel there's no backgrounds, but it doesn't matter because it really works. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see it there at the bottom, on the bottom panel. It works because in terms of what John Jones is looking at there, he's focused on all those cars that are honking at him, almost ran him down. He's not focused on the backgrounds. So I don't mind that the backgrounds are light at times in this book because it works to sell the aesthetic that Javier Rodriguez is going for. Now, in terms of the color palette, that's where he really brings it home. Javier Rodriguez really brings it home because, again, it's not a traditional superhero comic, so I don't necessarily feel like I need primary colors. And for the majority of anything that's sort of normal in terms of things you'd seen in everyday life, Earth, walking around, buildings, people, clothes, sidewalk, it's all a little bit of this more of a muted palette. It's not really that bright, super primary color palette that I would want in a superhero book. But when you talk about the thought smoke, the ideas that the entity shares, or the ideas and the thoughts that the entity is able to read from other people, like when somebody dies, their thought smoke, leaves their mind, and the entity is able to see their history, see the things they've lived through, their memories, their experiences, all that. And because the entity can see and feel those things and understand them, then to some extent, John Jones can see and feel them and understand them as well. So it's such an effective way because that contrast between the muted palette for everyday sort of mundane things that we're used to seeing and the thought smoke, which only John Jones and this entity that's inside him, the Martian Manhunter, can see. It being these really bright pinks and yellows and blues and greens that leap off the page with all sorts of rendering inside them, the memories and the thoughts of these people. That contrast just sells it so well. It's just how alien it is, how different. And you can understand why John Jones he's kind of losing his shit, right? Because he doesn't understand what's going on. And no matter where he looks, he's seeing versions of what this alien looks like. But again, it's not exactly what the alien looks like. It's like the alien interpreted through what John Jones thinks of as an alien, as a Martian, filtered back through the alien. And he's walking down the street at one point. He looks at a baby and he sees the Martian as the baby, or the baby as the Martian, however you want to put it. And the final panel where he's laying there in bed after he's had this horrible day, where he confronted a gunman who was shooting immigrants, Middle Eastern immigrants, in a part of town called Little Damascus. And he was talking to him and had him calm down, but then another police officer showed up, shot the guy through the head, and killed him. And then we see a scene of John Jones getting chewed out by his superior. Why were you just talking to him? Whatever. The guy had schizophrenia. The entity, Martian Manhunter, actually entered his mind, and cured him in a way, like took out the diseased part, or was able to isolate it. So the guy looked around and realized what he'd done and was feeling terrible. And then, before anything else could happen, he was shot and killed. So this is kind of the day that John Jones has had. And he goes home, gets in bed with his wife. She says, "How was your day?" Fine. And he lays down, and his self-image there is not of himself, but of the Martian. So you wonder, is this entity going to take over completely? I mean, it feels more science fiction to me than anything, but I have heard um, from the creative team, or from DC, or maybe from both, I can't remember which, the word horror applied to it, which, you think of something like, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or what have you. There's a horror element to it, but I don't feel like it's gotten to that point yet. I'm sure if I was John Jones, I might feel differently. Some entity taking over my body is pretty terrifying. But this is just a fantastic book. It's completely different, far and away the most different of the absolute titles from its titular character. Obviously, this doesn't in any way resemble the Martian Manhunter in the main universe at all. But I'm still really, really enjoying this. And I want to give so much credit to Javier Rodriguez for doing a lot of the heavy lifting here. And I'm sure Dennis Camp would agree with me that this doesn't work without this art style with these colors. It just, it's a perfect marriage. This is one of those books that shows you the power of the medium. So I thought it was really great. What do you think of it, Rocky?
I thought it was excellent. You're right that this comic book would not work without these visuals, and but you so compliments, of course, to the artist Rodriguez, but high compliments to Dennis Camp, because one of the things that's really worked, and Dennis Camp, I was worried that he wasn't going to be able to pull it off, is he's managed to very masterfully, in my view, have it so that the Manhunter, or the Martian Man, or mind effer, as it's suggested to be called, the way that you could see how the Martian aspect that has entangled himself, not invaded the body, but entangled himself in the mind of John Jones, is basically trying to communicate with John Jones in a way that John Jones can understand him. So the Martian is the Martian who's entangled in the mind of John Jones is trying his best to use metaphors and trying to describe things to John in with visuals and memories and with words that he might be able to relate to better and understand. And as he's struggling to do that, we, the readers, are becoming more and more enlightened as to what is really going on here. And we see the struggle and the frustration that John has, because in many ways we, the reader, can share in that frustration. And we also share in what John is seeing through the amazing visuals. And so it's pretty good. And you touched upon a lot of the the creative high points and aspects of this issue, but narratively it works really well as well, with the fact that you know. That John Jones utilizes his own skills, because he's able to, as John, as the Martian aspect tells him, what happens in your head really also happens. So in other words, you're actually seeing things that are happening or are about to, or other people's memories, and John uses that to his advantage by essentially through the being able to read the mind of the Trigger Taylor, the shooter here. He basically pretends to be the shooter's schoolhood buddy, schoolhood friend, best friend, and it works really well. And it sort of helps, it helps to sort of de-escalate the situation and to prevent him from shooting more people. And it really works. And so John Jones's struggle to with the Martian aspect of him, being entangled in the mind with the Martian, being able to avert a crisis from getting worse, works really well. And you can, again, I got all kinds of questions. In particular, what's really interesting here, I have to mention this, is that the Martian Manhunter in his mind, or the Martian mind effer, mentions another potential threat. He refers to a white Martian. And so he has hinted at who the other threat might be, and an observation is made by what John himself senses, and that is he senses increasing despair, fear, paranoia, rage everywhere. And there's this buildup of bad vibes, as the Martian describes it. And where do these bad vibes come from? Does this come from, it seems to be out of the ordinary. Does this come from the white Martian? Or does it exist because this is the dark side universe? Does it exist because of Omega energy? I don't know. I'm just speculating, but I kind of like that we're getting sort of hints at maybe a larger narrative that's slowly the seeds being planted. And in any ways, very well done. And yeah, definitely made my top 5.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, having the white Martian, because that is probably one tie that we can throw back to the main universe. Green Martians and white Martians and what have you. That's certainly part of John Jones's mythos, the John Jones of the main universe. So that's interesting. Also, in terms of a larger narrative that introduced right at the end, last page, throwing something else in, because it's been pretty focused on John Jones. It's been a very insular title so far in terms of who the main character is, which is interesting to me, because a lot of times, especially two full issues in here, when we have a mystery, we're kind of like, okay, don't drag it out too long because we want to know. We've seen that done before. Titans Academy comes to mind, right?
Yeah.
Other recent titles where they've dragged things out too long. I haven't stopped to really think. Okay, I get that this entity came from far, far away and is completely alien in terms of just being so different from John Jones, but and the connection was triggered by this suicide bomber, but how? Other people were in that explosion as well. Other people have been involved in explosions in this universe in the past. So how did this connection happen? That's something that can be explored, and I'm sure it will be at some point. But it's interesting that the story's been so good that I haven't been caught up on that, caught up in wondering that at all, honestly, until something you said made me think, yeah, we don't even know how this entity got connected to John Jones at this point. So we have that to look
Yeah.
forward to as well. So yeah, fantastic job by the whole creative team. All right. Up next, we have Batman 159. This is Hush 2, Part 2, I guess we'll call it. Or Hush 2, Chapter 2, The Rook. Written by Jeff Loeb, Jim Lee on pencil, Scott Williams on inks, Alex Sinclair on colors, Richard Starking's handling the lettering. Doesn't make either of our top five. Comes in at number 10 for me. Um, and Rocky and I were talking about this before we started recording. I mean, I did enjoy this issue more than I did the first issue, um, just because I felt like it had a little bit more momentum in the story. But the things that I don't like about it, it doesn't feel like it's in continuity. And I mentioned this when I was when I read the first one, and I was talking about the first issue, where it's like it feels like Hush 2 takes place like just a few weeks after the end of Hush 1, when it's been 20 years, if not longer. So
Yeah.
like the characterization of Jason Todd in this issue, for example, feels weird and strange. Characterization for Batman looks weird and strange. Um, I've never been the biggest Jim Lee fan. I've never been like a Jim Lee fanboy. I liked his art, well enough, but he's never like one of my top 5 favorite artists or what have you. I've probably grown to appreciate his art even more over the years. That being said, this isn't Jim Lee at the height of his powers, and I wouldn't expect him to be. The guy's gotten older. Um, he doesn't have that same hunger of youth or what have you. Some things, you could argue that he's better at storytelling now than he might have been back then, and you might be right. I won't speak to that, but I'll just say that there's nothing new here. There's nothing exciting. This was, and I'm setting aside the whole thing about um, telling Zdarsky's off the book. Then, hey, you're not. You are. You're not. You are. You're not. The whole back and forth, saying, hey, we want the Hush 2 to be in the regular Batman title, and then saying, okay, well, it's only going to be the first 6 that had to be in the regular title to kick Zdarsky off. Now you're only doing the first 6. Second half of it's going to be in a mini series because you're putting Fraction on Batman. Like, there's just all kinds of problems with this, and it like, I can sum it up in one word. It just feels dated. This just feels like, hey, if this had
Right.
come out 2 or 3 years after Hush, the first one, hey, great, no problem. But the DC universe itself has evolved past this. And this feels like a step backwards. And it might end up being an entertaining story when all is said and done. When we get the final 6 issues of the miniseries, who knows when that'll happen? 2026 maybe. Um, but yeah, this feels more than anything like a vanity project to maybe pull in readers that loved the first Hush, and if they haven't read any DC in the meantime, really, then
Yeah.
I guess they'll love this. But for like longtime fans like me, it's just not landing, man. This is just not. I mean, again, I can appreciate the Jim Lee art. I can appreciate the momentum of the story. In terms of a technical comic, there's nothing wrong with it. It's put together excellently. But in terms of like tying in with what's going on with All In, the events of the crossover that's going on in Justice League Unlimited and Batman Superman right now, no, this is wildly out of touch with all of that. So
Yeah.
this is not for me. That's all I'll say. This is
Mhm.
not for me.
Yeah. I would just add that I mean I echo everything you said. Like I said, we touched upon it briefly before we started uh, uh, podcasting here, but yeah, this feels like this feels like Jeff Loeb sort of like either kind of like phoned it in like a couple weeks after he finished the first series 20 years ago, and quite frankly, it's this characterization is very much dated. This doesn't feel like Jason Todd. This doesn't feel really like Batman. The continuity is completely whacked. Quite frankly, if I was to judge this by the standards that I normally do, I think I would be extremely harsh. But the art is excellent. I think Jim Lee. I mean, we get Jim Lee. The backgrounds are excellent. The line work is impeccable. It's still really good. So I can't complain there. But in terms of the story itself, this is really, I mean, Jason Todd acting like he did a couple weeks, after coming back from the under the from whatever the Under the Hood series, and it's just really really disappointing. I wish Jeff Lott, it's funny. I don't want to play script doctor, but there's such an easy way that you could have tweaked this story and actually made it fit in the continuity. If Jason Todd is apparently working for Hush, you could easily have it that Jason Todd. It would be more interesting if Jason Todd was working for Hush, but written properly and not acting so out of character and dealing with the psychological issues that Batman still thinks he's dealing with. Batman and Jason Todd have a conversation, the type of confrontation and deep conversation and about his death at the hands of the Joker that we've seen this numerous times over the last 20 years. That could have been all dispensed with, and we could have moved the characters forward, and this plot line could have been dealt with had somebody bothered to tell Jeff Lowe, by the way, this is what's happened in the previous arc. Even the Riddler shows up here. The Riddler was just arrested last issue, or under Zdarsky's run, and now this new version of the Riddler shows up. It looks cool, it looks awesome, but clearly out of continuity. Which I should say that the decision to make this part of regular Batman, like I wish this was a miniseries because I wouldn't collect it. Sacrilege, I know, but I wouldn't get this. But now I'm almost forced to because I'm a completionist, and this is part of the regular Batman series. I have to buy it now. But this feels like a miniseries that I would otherwise just skip. Yeah, but I'm missing out on actual genuine mainstream continuity because this feels out of place. But I'm a little bit harsh. But Jeff Loeb, I really did expect better, and I expected him to do his homework. He didn't do it. He's just going to be satisfying one aspect of the crowd, and that's frankly the crowd that they should not be looking to attract. I.e., yes, you want to attract the old crowd, but you want to bring in new readers and maintain existing readers happy. And thank God we got the Absolute Universe because this was definitely a disappointment. And I don't see it getting any better either. But I'll eat my words if I'm wrong. If I can eat my words in putting down Tom King and then coming back and making his Wonder Woman my pick of the week last week, I can gladly admit to being wrong. But we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, and it's very simple. DC just says, well, yeah, this story did take place, a year, 6 months or whatever after the first Hush. And then, then it all makes sense and the characterization doesn't matter or what have you. But then again, I go back to your point of, well, then why is it in the regular Batman book? Especially when the whole thing, again, if they wanted to put the whole, the first Hush was not a miniseries. It was in the regular Batman book. And if they wanted to continue that tradition, or wanted this to be the same, okay, great. Then the whole thing should have been in the book. And if Jim Lee couldn't finish it in time, then you should have waited and left Zdarsky on the book until you had it, all in the can and then done it all at once. But whatever, I don't make those decisions. Some of those decisions I doubt even DC editorial made. Probably came down from Warner Brothers Discovery, and all they care about is the bottom line, not what's best for the books or the characters or the readers, unfortunately. So anyway, moving on. Up next, we have a book that does make both of our top five. In my top three, in your top three. It's Green Lantern number 22 from the aforementioned Jeremy Adams. Art is by Zermanico, colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr., letters by Dave Sharp. Great to see Zermanico back on the book. We had Jack Herbert here doing a couple issues. I love his art. He's fantastic. But there's something about Zermanico's art where you get that action and you get that fine line and you get the details, but he also there's a groundedness to it, not in terms of feeling like street level characters or what have you, because these are not street level characters. These are not street level stories. We're going cosmic here. It's Green Lantern, but there's a weight to his art a strength to it that I really really enjoy. So and much like always, Jeremy's doing a fantastic job of balancing stuff that's happening on Earth. You know, we have Hector Hammond that shows up, classic Green Lantern villain. So we have that battle between Hector Hammond and Star Sapphire and Hal Jordan. And then Hal Jordan takes Director Bones to task for the things that he's doing. That's a great moment. That's a fantastic conversation. And then we jump out into space with Kyle Rayner and Superboy and Odyssey, the time traveling thief. And they are there to collect a bunch of nth metal because again we know they're trying to rebuild all the power batteries. I hope you guys have been reading Green Lantern Corps because these titles very much cross pollinate. So they need a bunch of nth metal so they can rebuild all the power batteries so they can stop the instability of the emotional spectrum and all these fractal lanterns that are popping up. And lo and behold, when they go to this vault, this hidden vault where a bunch of nth metal is, who do they find there? Of all people, the first Blue Beetle, Dan Garrett. Wait, what? I thought that guy was long dead. Leave it to
Yeah.
Jeremy Adams to have. Like, I was like, who is this guy they're rescuing? And you know, when they ask what his name is, he says Dan Garrett. I'm just like, wait, what the heck? And then Odyssey's trying to sneak him out because there's all these giant bugs that are attacking them. We're not sure exactly where they have come from. Is it the Starbreaker that sent him after them? Is it the Sorrow Lantern? Where they were like, we're not sure. So Kyle and Superboy go out there to fight against them. And Odyssey is leading Dan out, you know, try to get into their spaceship so they can escape. And, you know, he sees that they're in trouble. He reaches out to what very much looks like Kaji Da, which is, you know, the beetle entity that is fused with Jaime Reyes, um, and gives him his powers as a Blue Beetle. And we see Dan Garrett reach out to one of these type of entities and get surrounded and armored up in silver armor, and he's calling himself the Silver Scarab. Which, you know, the last Silver Scarab I remember was Hector Hall from Infinity Incorporated, um, and there's a little bit of that look. If I remember correctly, Hector Hall didn't have his head fully covered. This looks a little bit like a cross between Silver Scarab and
Yeah.
Dan Garrett's first Blue Beetle costume. Um, but this is just fantastic. This is like huge callbacks not only to, you know, classic DC stuff, but going back to Charlton days when Dan Garrett was the, you know, the first Blue Beetle. Um, and Dan Garrett was friends with Ted Kord and bequeathed his legacy of Blue Beetle to Ted Kord, but unfortunately, a lot of the actual technology, alien tech or what have you, that Dan Garrett had was lost, and so that's why Ted Kord had to kind of become more of a like gadget centric Blue Beetle because he didn't actually have any powers. Just had his gun and the bug that he built and all that. But oh my God, Dan Garrett is back. Like, wait, what? Um, and I'm gonna have to give Jeremy a bad time the next time I see him. And you can warn him, Rocky, because we had dinner not so long ago, and we talked about this issue. He told me about this issue, and he did not mention Dan Garrett. But what he did mention to me was we get to the last part where Hal Jordan heads into hell um, because he needs to go into hell to get some more of the materials they need to rebuild the lantern batteries. And who do they run into in hell? Somebody you would maybe least expect, and that's Nort. And Jeremy was telling me how he landed on Nort as this character. You can ask him to tell you that story as well, Rocky, because it's a good one. Who he may, if he may have originally thought of somebody else that he wanted there, and then yeah, different decisions made, what have you. But yeah, a lot of fun. My head is still spinning over the Dan Garrett thing. The art's fantastic. Man, like Green Lantern might be the best DC title coming out right now. Like you never know
Yeah.
who's going to show up, but he doesn't just throw them in there to throw them in there. You know, all these characters have been showing up in Green Lantern and Green Lantern Corps. It makes sense why they're there. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, in my mind, Jeremy Adams needs to be show running the DC universe right now. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love what Mark Waid and Joshua Williamson are doing a
Yeah.
fantastic job. But when Jeremy's time comes, um, you know, whether those guys have moved on to do other things or they just want to have a little bit lighter workload, but having Jeremy as like the showrunner and keeping track of continuity and who's doing what and whatever, man, um, that would be fantastic. He would do such a great job. He's made for that. 100%. Might be a lot of work. You might not even want to do it because it's so much work, or you might want to do it for a little while, but not indefinitely. Um, but there's so many times where before Didio left and then after Didio left, where we would have the conversation, or people would ask me, or it would just come up and say, hey, yeah, who do you think would be a good like editor in chief? Who would do a good job? And Jimmy Palmiotti's name would come up a lot. I think Jeremy's at the top of my list now. Like, if you want to give somebody the reins creatively over the entire
Yeah.
DC universe, I picked Jeremy. Anyway, what
Yeah.
do you think of this?
Oh, this is just great. And you mentioned Mark Wade. I will say I would agree that Jeremy Adams is what Mark Wade is really good at masterfully sort of giving us past stories of the DC universe, and sort of morphing them into some relevancy to modern day stories, or putting a different spin on how we view the modern day, present day storytelling. Jeremy Adams fits in very well with that, but I actually like Jeremy Adams' style of storytelling better than Mark Wade's at this point, because it actually feels more new. And in fairness to Mark Wade is got his hands in a little bit more baskets than Jeremy Adams, and he's got to steer handle everything a little bit more. But Jeremy Adams does such a good job here, and in fact, Jeremy Adams has even gone so far in this issue to sort of prompt the reader, because Jeremy Adams clearly does his homework. He knows his continuity. He introduces, I mean, characters like Silver Scarab and Damn Guard It. I mean, are you kidding? I mean, out of the blue, this is fantastic, and it's an easy to follow story. The characterization is spot on. I mean, Hector Hammond taken out by Hal Jordan and Star Sapphires. Star Sapphires kicking ass. Hal Jordan given some serious attitude to Director Bones of the DEO, not putting up with any of his horse shit about jurisdiction and nonsense, because the Green Lantern Corps and the Owens simply clearly trump the pardon my word, trump the jurisdiction of the United States of America when it comes to intergalactic threats like arguably Hector Hammond and what have you. Just the dialogue, everything works, and there's humor, there's fun, there's kick-ass action. Odyssey, Superboy, Kyle Rayner, their interactions, dealing with his bug world, all of and again the visuals by Extra Monaco, fantastic. Silver Scarab looks amazing on that one page spread. It just looks. I mean, who would have thought the Silver Scarab could look imposing? Oh my God, fantastic, very well done. And going to hell of all people and meeting up with Gnort. I mean, Jeremy Adams. I mean, not everyone can pull that off. Combining the almost nonsensical nature of some and nature of these characters with these intergalactic plots. Jeremy Adams finds a way to do it, and at one point he even sort of the Hal Jordan, along with Phantom Stranger and Ariel, find themselves in front of St. Patrick's Purgatory in Ireland. And there's an asterisk, and there's a note, editorial note from Jeremy Adams that just says, "Look it up." He's saying, "You want to know what that is? Just Google it." And I appreciate that. And Jeremy, I did in fact look it up. And St. Patrick's Purgatory in Ireland is just it's a famous church, what have you. And you can imagine the connections with respect to hell and purgatory, and you guys can look it up yourself. But anyways, very well done. And DC, I mean, this is just, there's a reason why Green Lantern continues to be usually in our top 5 every week. And keep it up, Jeremy, and looking forward to seeing you this weekend.
Yeah, I just sent him a message telling him that how dare he not tell me about Dan Garrett. He just left at me. Anyway, let's move on. I'm gonna let you go first on this next one because it comes in your top 5. It just misses out for me and comes in at number 6. It's Absolute Wonder Woman number 7, Lady or the Tiger Part 2 of 2, written by Kelly Thompson, Matea de Eloise on art, including the colors, and then Becca Carey handles the letters. So give us your thoughts.
This, Absolute Wonder Woman continues to just get better and better and better. I had my doubts when this in the first few issues, but Kelly Thompson just keeps this, her. I initially thought she's won me over, quite frankly. I'll admit, I thought that I thought this was initially too focused on the mythology. I thought it was a little bit too. I didn't like the characterization. I thought it was maybe too predictable. She was. I felt Wonder Woman maybe was Absolute Wonder Woman was maybe a little bit of a Mary Sue in terms of her. She's perfect again and what have you. And you know what? I'm thinking about it wrong. And Kelly Thompson, the way these narratives have gone, this really is this feels like a mythological tale where Wonder Woman is clearly on a journey here. And I do think that I was a little bit misguided in my earlier criticism, and I'm not going to blame Hayden Sherman, but I'm going to say that, quite frankly, this feels like a different character to me, and I'm going to attribute it to the art. This DeLuise on the art here is just absolutely fantastic. This is part two of a two-parter, the late called "The Lady or the Tagger." This particular issue, and it's Wonder Woman has basically she's in Hades. She's trying to basically rescue her mother, but Hades will have none of it, and and in this particular case, how does Wonder Woman escape hell? We knew that inevitably this was coming. The lead up to this was, we knew that Wonder Woman was not allowed to escape hell. That Cersei was basically forced to be the mother. Well, not forced, but she found herself becoming a reluctant mother, then won over through young Diana's compassion and loving nature. And Cersei became a very caring and nurturing mother, but also one that educated young Diana to become the absolute Wonder Woman that she is. And through thick and thin, Wonder Woman has really risen to the occasion and is extremely knowledgeable in hell. One of the things that's always a pet peeve that's always bothered me about Wonder Woman in the mainstream universe is that she's too beholden to her gods. What I love what Kelly Thompson has done here is she has clearly placed Wonder Woman in hell, and I thought one of the things that I thought she wasn't going to be able to pull off, and I was wrong, is that how the hell do you stay loyal to hell, to Hades, to these horrible gods while living in hell, while also purporting to save humanity? How the hell do you pull that off? Well, she has, and she's done it in a very masterful way. She's convinced me that it's quite possible. Wonder Woman is very much a reluctant servant to the gods, but she always finds a way through other means, through her own intelligence and trickery and wisdom, to sort of get one up. And in this issue, she gets one up on Hades himself, and through the help of Hades' wife, through the use of eating some pomegranate seeds, which allows her to return to hell after defeating Hades in the tournament. She's in this gladiatorial combat with this sort of tagger lady, and who she manages to defeat. I further love the fact that Kelly Thompson has Wonder Woman killed, albeit reluctantly. She has to kill her opponent, and she does. She asks forgiveness and kills the opponent. I love that aspect because Amazons do, in fact, kill. Another common misconception is that they don't. I like the fact that she does, but they do so reluctantly and as a last resort, and when honor or the situation demands it. It's the care ethical code of the Amazonian code, and I really like that. What Kelly Thompson, I really think, has done her research here. A fact that I frankly doubted at the beginning of this series. I was wrong. I'm happy I'm wrong. The art here is fantastic. This story has a lot to say. Wonder Woman ends up defeating her opponent, and then she has to choose between two doors based on the lady or the tagger story of behind one door is essentially happiness, behind another door is lies a tagger and death. You got to choose which door. You got to read the story to get the further details. Wonder Woman wins the day, chooses the door for freedom, but Hades thinks he's pulled one over on Wonder Woman, saying, now you can never return, and I have your mother captive, Cersei captive, you can never come back for her. But Wonder Woman can, because Wonder Woman, from what I love is that from the very beginning, Cersei and Wonder Woman, as a young Diana, they were preparing for this moment. They knew that at some point they would have to be accountable to Hades for when they escaped hell, because they did it once before, and they knew they would have to do it again. And at some point, this was going to have to happen. And they prepared for this. They prepared for this moment in terms of how they would deal with it, and how they would escape again, and how they get one over on Hades. And it's all explained in this story. It's written so well, and the art really enhances it. The art by DeLuise it projects a majesty and a nobility and an intelligence and wisdom for Diana. Gone is the doe-eyed brunette bimbo that Hayden Sherman, on too many pages, in my view, displayed. There are going to be those that visually disagree with me on that. Art is subjective, but I'm going to use the phrase visual verisimilitude. Hayden Sherman's art doesn't quite have it for me. This art does. Now, I know this artist isn't going to come back, but I really do think I would promote an artistic change in art on this series, away from Hayden Sherman to frankly almost anyone else, because it's not working for me. And these two issues made me love this series, and I hope I can make the adjustment going back to Hayden Sherman's art. But we'll have to wait and see. I'm not, I sound harsher than I am, because I really I see this series, I see this issue in particular, and I see, my God, the potential. This is what I'm missing, and this was easily in my top 5 this week. So, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think Hayden's style is a little more fanciful, which that can work for Wonder Woman. But I'm a huge fan of Mattea, just a huge fan. That being said, I didn't think that his art style worked as well in this second part as it did in the first part. Mostly because of scale, which is really interesting. Um, we had Prometheus that showed up in the first of his two parts, and I just thought he handled the scale of it really, really well. Um, because the scale is different here, pretty much everybody's human sized. We get more smaller panels, and I just don't think his art has as much room to breathe. But it's still very, very good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm just a huge fan of. He's a super nice guy as well, and has some great storytelling chops. So, um, yeah, I mean, argument is still to be made on if Wonder Woman is Hugh's the closest. If this absolute Wonder Woman is the closest to her main universe counterpart. It seems like she is. There are differences, of course, but when we talk about tying her origins and her mythos to the gods and the legends of the gods and what have you, that's still a core part of the character. And Kelly Thompson does a fantastic job here of taking the story, the classic story from Greek myth of Persephone and Hades, and makes the relationship between the two a little more antagonistic here um, than in classic myth. I mean, in classic myth, Persephone's almost more like Wonder Woman here, where she wants to be with Hades, so she eats the seed so she can go back at times, but doesn't always have to be in hell. And that's kind of so it's a little bit different. Um, but regardless of that, the details, just the way that it ties in and makes Wonder Woman, both in terms of the character and in terms of the title, feel mythological. Really, again, it works for the character, and it's familiar to a lot of Wonder Woman fans. Now, that's my least favorite part of Wonder Woman, the fact that she's, I guess, a demigod is what we would say. Um, depending on which particular origin you're going with or whatever. Like there's a part of me that wishes she had no connection to the gods whatsoever. Um, but you kind of can't be an Amazon without having connections to the gods or what have you. But those are the stories, when she's fighting Ares or Zeus is a protagonist. In this case, Hades. Like it just doesn't. It just it's boring to me. It just maybe it's too much. Classic Greek literature and stuff that I had to do in my first couple of years of college, because I went to a private university and we were required to take those classes about Greek mythology, um, and I just didn't enjoy it. It's just not for me. So anyway, yeah, this I don't share your same sentiment that we need somebody other than Hayden. I like seeing Mattea. I hope he comes back in when Hayden needs a break again. Um, but I'm really curious to see what Hayden's going to do on the next, because now he's had a little bit of a break, right? A little bit more time to maybe work on the next issue. So he gets a chance to come at it with fresh eyes. So I'm really curious, and I didn't dislike his art, but I mean, having a chance to see how somebody else handles some things, I think can be interesting as well. He's a really strong storyteller. Again, it's just a difference in style,
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what he does when he comes back. So anyway, let's move on. Up next, God, I really don't have anything to say about this next book. Um, it's Green Lantern Dark #4. It's written by Tate Bromble. The art is by Werther Dell'Edera. Colors by Giovanna Nero. Letters by Tom Napolitano. This is specifically the book that I was talking about or thinking about in the back of my mind when I said, your mom's always tell you if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. This is just not my cup of tea. I
Yeah.
I don't care for this art style at all. Like I know Werther is beloved for his work on Something is Killing the Children. I don't read that series. Never read a single issue of it. Um, this art style feels unfinished to me and sketchy and just not my cup of tea. I don't care for the kind of the droll or drab colors either. I mean, it's Green Lantern. It should be a little brighter in my mind. The titular character, Green Lantern Dark, is incredibly unlikable. Um, it's not a hero in any way, shape, or form. The one thing that the book does get right is the word dark. This takes you down a dark path. It is a
Yeah.
dark book. This is dreary and drab and depressing. So it's definitely dark. Not my cup of tea at all. I haven't heard how it's doing sales wise. I have no idea. I hope there are people out there that are enjoying this, because I know Bromble and Deladera are giving their all. But yeah, this is not for me at all. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just add that I believe this is a first appearance. I encourage people, if I'm wrong, to correct me in the comments below. I think this is the first appearance of a character called the Bat Wraith, who is the I'm assuming the Batman of this Green Lantern Dark universe, or maybe this is a character that's been done before. I don't know. So it's interesting that I just think that frankly the story here is just not particularly interesting. It's way too dark. I think it's unfortunately. Tate Bromwell, as much as I'm enjoying as Batgirl, this is just seems very convoluted to me. It's just not working. I don't even understand exactly what powers this Bat Wraith has and what's going on. It's too esoteric, the stuff that's going on. It's supposed to be horror, but there's so much that I'm not even sure what's happening half the time and what the threat is exactly. And it just doesn't really seem to resonate, and I'm not really quite getting the character relationships or motivations here. It's just that it doesn't work for me. And there's this Demona character who's the villain, and I'm really not sure what bug she has up her chimney. And it's just unfortunate. It just really is not working. Significant miss has been from the beginning, and I wish I could, like I said, so much potential. But this was there's nothing Green Lantern about Green Lantern Dark. And there never was when the character first came out to begin with. Quite frankly, in the Tangent universe, very odd choice for a series to be given a green light.
I do like her character
Did they?
design. Yeah, I like the fact that she is carrying a traditional lantern on a
Yeah.
on a staff. That's
I, gu-
cool.
I gu- I
Um,
guess, but I feel like
yeah,
that's the only reason they came up with the design, and then they built a story around a nice design. But a nice
yeah,
design does not a story make. But anyways,
yeah, true. So anyway, like I said, comes in at 14 for me, but we will move on. Up next, we have Green Arrow, number 23. This makes my top five. Narrowly misses for Rocky. Written by Christopher Condon, drawn by Montos. We have colors by Adriana Lucas, letters by Hassan Otsman Elhau. And even though this one's in my top five, I don't have a whole heck of a lot to say about it that I haven't said about this title before. Chris Condon gets Green Arrow. And at the end of the day, that's all I need to say. Because he just does. He understands that Green Arrow works best as a street level character. Green Arrow works best fighting against non superpowered foes, but foes that have an agenda, motivations that are understandable, right? And in this story that he kicks off with, what a great decision to start with this story, where the villains aren't really villains. They're regular people like you or I who were sold homes and land that were terribly polluted by toxic waste, and the powers that be, the ones that sold them the land and developed it, knew. They knew that the water there was tainted. They knew that the water was polluted. They knew that the ground was polluted. And these people have endured terrible hardship because of diseases and cancers and tumors and all sorts of stuff. And they feel like they didn't get justice. And what justice can there be when these, for lack of a better term, fat cats have profited off of them, and they're dying. They're years after they've had their small payoff, their small compensation. They're dying of cancer, relatives dying of cancer, and what have you. And to put it in the words of the story, the rest of the world has moved on, has moved past them. Um, they can't move past it. It's impacted their lives too much. So, I mean, and these are the quote unquote bad guys, right? And yet they're sympathetic. You can understand why they're doing the things that they're doing. Doesn't mean they're right. Doesn't mean that they should be out, killing cops and that are trying to catch them and fighting Green Arrow. And the argument could be made they shouldn't even be poisoning the people that poison them. The whole saying. I guess we're hearing from a lot of our mothers in this episode the whole two wrongs don't make a right. Don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything. Well, two wrongs don't make a right either. But again, you can understand their motivation. You can understand and you can sympathize with them. So that's just great writing from Christopher Condon. And then in terms of how great Condon is in establishing the tone of the story narratively, Montos is the perfect choice to establish the tone of the story visually. His art is dynamic. He handles the fight scenes very, very well. But there's a grittiness to it and a texture to it, which again lends itself to this kind of street level type of story, this very human story that Christopher Condon is telling. So this book is fantastic. I haven't heard enough people talking about what a great job, especially coming out of the Joshua Williamson run, where Green Arrow was kind of in over his head, dealing with world-ending threats like Brainiac, Queen, and Failsafe,
Yeah.
and great use of him by Mark Waid to have Martian Manhunter have given him a post-hypnotic suggestion, so Amanda Waller couldn't read his mind and realize he really was a plant. He really wasn't on her side. But that's not where Green Arrow works best. He doesn't work the best when he's with people who are far outweigh him on the scale of power. He works best like this, and you can look at the times when his book has sold the best, and it proves it out. Right, Mike Grell, again, similar art style to Montos in terms of being a gritty and street level kind of, and dealing with more grounded villains, longbow hunters, and the Mike Grell run is probably the high point in terms of sales and popularity for Green Arrow, followed by the time of the Arrow TV show, which that did help sales a little bit, but for a completely different reason, um, and was a little bit of a different animal, so to speak. But I'm really enjoying this run. Um, I was kind of thinking how originally we were told that the Green Arrow book was ending after 6 issues when Joshua Williamson was first doing it. Then they extended it, and it got really kind of wonky and was inconsistent up and down in the hands of Josh for a couple different reasons. Not all his fault, editorial, and having it like that book was tying into everything else, and it was just tough to really focus. And the whole time travel thing and whatever, it just didn't. It wasn't the best choice, but this is where Green Arrow works the best, and I'm glad to see DC getting it right. So again, I know it's not in your top 5, Rocky, but anything to add?
Yeah, Chris Condos continues to do a really good job. I've been enjoying this series. I agree with your comments. I will say that I mean, just taking the social justice aspect to the extreme, very different than Joshua Williamson run. I like it. This issue, not a lot, heck of a lot happens. Detective Benitez has been captured by the Clearwater sort of like terrorists, and Green Arrow ultimately shows up to rescue her, and it's very well done. I will say it's very decompressed. It's very decompressed storytelling. It feels very different than your sort of traditional. This is not Green Arrow the superhero. This is genuinely Green Arrow the social justice warrior. But very well done. And I gotta full compliments to the art as well. The art reinforces the idea of just the ambiance and the feel of it's definitely a more grounded tale, more grounded Green Arrow, and it definitely works.
All right, up next we have Justice League Unlimited number 6. Doesn't make either of our top 5. Comes in at number 7 for me. Script by Mark Waid. This is interesting. The plot is by Mark Waid and Christopher Cantwell, which I find very interesting. Christopher Cantwell is a super talented writer. Could he be taking over Justice League at some point? I just like what a strange like he's been doing stuff over at Marvel. He's done stuff for DC in the past. He's got some creator owned stuff and some independent stuff coming right now. Really interesting. because a lot of times when you start seeing co-plotting, it's one person about to hand a book off to somebody else. So could Christopher Cantwell become the Justice League? I mean, most recently his DC work was Plastic Man No More, which, talk about dark stories. So be interesting to see Christopher come on to Justice League, but I guess we'll see. Art in this issue by Travis Moore. He does a fantastic job filling in. Tamara Bonvillain on colors, and then Dave Sharp on letters. This is part two of We Are Yesterday, and it basically tells the story of how a Gorilla Grodd from the past um, put together a Legion of Doom, and then brought them forward in time. And they are Inferno. They are who has the villain group that's been calling themselves Inferno. Um, and this was just a fantastic story. It fits in very well. I said the part one, I wasn't the biggest fan of it. It felt a little bit like a prologue. With the forward momentum of the story that we get in this issue, that feels like even more of the case, right? That should have been prologue. It didn't feel like it was really the start of the story. This feels like the start of the story because we get the origin. We see how Gorilla Grodd is able to get the abilities, how he's able to break free from being captured in part one, where we saw in World's Finest. We find out how he has the ability to time travel, how his mental powers are sort of amped up, how he recruited and what's the word? I don't want to say tricked, but
Manipulated, I guess.
manipulated Airwave into being his mole inside the Justice League. It's just a fantastic story. And Travis Moore, he's a great choice for artist. He has a very clean, superheroic style, and he does a great job with the art. Um, and it's going to be interesting to see. If I have a prediction, I feel a little bit like it's going to be Martian Manhunter that comes and saves the day. I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of part five of We Are Yesterday that things look dark, things look bleak for the heroes of the Justice League, and it looks like the time traveling Legion of Doom is going to prevail, and it's going to be John Jones. It's going to be Martian Manhunter that comes in and saves the day because um, the way Grodd is able to do this, why he is leveled up, and why you see that sort of mental helmet of mental energy around his head is because he does have the powers of Martian Manhunter in addition to his own mental powers. And we know that during the events of Absolute Power, toward the end, that a lot of superheroes lost their powers and things got switched around and whatever. So whatever was responsible for that took John Jones, Martian Manhunter's mental powers, and gave them to Gorilla Grodd. So he's probably one of the most powerful mentalists in the DC universe in this story. And he's using that ability and his intellect to, again, time travel to recruit classic versions of a classic hero, Sinestro and Lex Luthor and Joker and Penguin and all that, and take on the Justice League. So um, I mean, if I didn't know better, I'd say this felt right out of an episode of Challenge of the Super Friends, Justice League cartoon from back in the day, Super Friends and what have you. It's fantastic, so fun, and Travis Moore's art style does it justice. So, anything to add, Rocky, before we move on?
Yeah, what's interesting is the fact that Gorilla Grodd not only had his mental powers increased by basically uh, acquiring Martian Manhunter's mental powers, but and telepathy and what have you. But also because of the fallout of DC All In, the amount of excess Omega energy in the universe, uh, Airwave, because Airwave is somebody who's was lost in time and came forward. Airwave himself has some tachyon energy within him that allowed Gorilla Grodd to sort of access and combine that with the pockets of Omega energy left over from I guess the death or the appearance of Darkseid, and it allows him to time travel essentially undetected. And I like the idea that he's getting that the Legion of Doom, he's getting all the members of the Legion of Doom in their evil prime. And I kind of like that aspect of it because with Omega energy, you think of Darkseid, you think of evil, and you think that there's something about Omega energy that seems to attract death, attract evil. There's a negativity about it, and I like that in the background here. That's the ambiance that imbues this story. and it's worked really well. And it looks like unfortunately something terrible happens to Airwave in this issue. I hope he's still around, but they're not being such thing as death in comics, so I'm sure he's going to be back because Airwave is too good a character, and Mark Waid was talking too excitedly about him early on. I can't imagine he's really gone here, so I think there's some narrative misdirection going on, and I thought this was very well done.
Yeah, he'll be back, no doubt. I mean, time travel, right? All right. Up next, we have the final issue of Power Girl from writer Leah Williams. Art is by David Baldione. Colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr. Letters by Becca Carey. You and I, for the last couple issues, have both expressed a little bit of disappointment that series is coming to an end when it's finally finding its footing. Um, I will say I didn't enjoy this final issue as much as the previous two, but that might just be because it's a situation where you got to wrap everything up, and it just doesn't have the same flow when it's leading into another issue. But again, I think Leigh Williams is really getting a handle on Power Girl and who she is. I The success of this series in terms of changing Power Girl, reinventing her, calling her Paige Statler instead of Karen Starr or whatever. You can argue about how successful that was. We do find out in a bit of an anticlimactic way that the Karen Starr that we saw last issue, we see here is um, the villain that showed up a few issues ago, the one that
Ejecta.
yeah, Ejecta, the one that was being manipulated by the entity that at one point was the AI of the symbiote ship that ties into Power Girl's origin. So all of that stuff really works. I think more as a long form story, and it's interesting, right? Because Power Girl is really embracing her Paige Statler identity to the point where she tells Ejecta, "Hey, you want to be Karen Stark? Like, go right ahead. You don't have any money anymore because I took it all and used it to create this new media empire." Um, which is interesting as well because it's like Leah Williams is using this as a platform to say the quiet parts out loud with some of the harm that social media does in our current society. And I know there are those that say, "Oh, how dare you put politics in my comics or what have you?" But I kind of would argue that politics have always been in comics. Okay, go back and read those early Superman stories when he's standing up against slumlords and what have you. And I think it's okay to have these these kind of plot lines because it engenders conversation. If we're going to move past and improve ourselves, it starts with conversation. So David Baldione, again, the perfect artist. I wish he'd been on the title from the beginning. Um, and yeah, I kind of wish this was continuing so I could see where it was going, but at least it's ending on a high note. So anything to add, Rocky?
Well, just that I thought it ended. I mean, I thought she was forced to end it. You could tell that you get a very strong sense, at least I did, that that obviously I think the storyline was meant to be a little bit longer and with more flushed out in terms of characters and what have you. So she unfortunately was not able to complete, maybe tell the longer thread story she wanted to tell. I will, I like the Karen Star name. I do think I agree with you, and of course we don't know. We can't. We'd have to ask the writer herself. But it seems to me that Leigh Williams, to now have the name Karen Star associated with a supervillain, I think is her way of saying "f you" to the people that, like myself, quite frankly, who think it was a narrative, a big mistake getting rid of that name and giving her a new one for absolutely no reason whatsoever that didn't serve the character in any way, and having, frankly, was pointless and has only added to confusion for Power Girl. And she's been a character whose hallmark has been a confusing series of narratives from her inception to today. And unfortunately, this series is going to go down as simply adding to it. Um, I hope that, I mean, we'll see that, how, I guess this name is going to stick probably because DC won't approve another name change. Uh, but, it's unfortunate. You're right. Lee Williams was finding her stride here. Um, and I really enjoyed the aspects of this series that dealt with the symbiote ship because it dealt more with her origin. And and in fairness to Leigh Williams, I don't think she got much editorial guidance. She was sort of left alone in the wilderness to do her own thing. She did her own thing with clearly with her passion, and she clearly had a vision for where she wanted these characters to go. Didn't resonate with, I guess, enough people to, at least not in the eyes of DC, since they've canceled this series. But it is a good character, and there is a lot to build on for future writers to take the character. And she does have her own world now. She has her own, so she has her own friends. She's got her own network of friends. She's got a business. She's got her own, she's got a fresh attitude, and she's got a primary supervillain, ejected, that's grounded in her own origin with the symbiote ship. And so that's good. Those are all movements forward for the character, and I will give Leigh Williams props for doing that, and going out of her way to do it on her own, and taking that step of doing a lot of research on the character. Yeah, ask editorial what direction they wanted to go, and them telling her, do whatever you want. Well, she did, and I think that, all things considered, I think she did an admirable job, given the fact that she, you know, was handed the keys to a particularly interesting kingdom. And to me, it has a little bit of a Sex in the City feel meets superheroes. And I think there's probably an audience for that. And you know, it is what it is. But I'm curious. I'd like to see Supergirl again in the future. And I guess we'll have to wait and see. And good luck to Leigh Williams to whatever she's writing next. I don't know if is she writing any more DC titles? Where's she going? Do you know?
I think she is writing more DC, but I'm not 100% or why I think that. I think I heard something, but it's funny that you said we'll see more Supergirl because we're talking about Power Girl here.
Oh, Power
But
Girl.
that's
That's
the
what I meant.
point, right? Yeah, that's the point. How interchangeable they've become, and that was part of the reason that they changed her name, I think. But again, her name was Karen Starr. I guess that's close enough to Kara Zor-El that they wanted to change it or what have you. But it's interesting that this series is ending, Power Girl's ending, and I think it's just next week or maybe the week after that we get Supergirl #1. So maybe DC has a rule about having them both have a title at the same time. I don't know if that's ever happened because people get confused. It is interesting. I don't think that we've had a definitive Power Girl series yet or a run because in the hands of different creators, she's so wildly different. Like in when she's Jeff John, when she's in the hands of Jeff Johns and JSA or whatever, she's much more sort of brusque and I don't want to say ill tempered, but she's almost like Big Barda, the way
Yeah.
that Johns writes her. Right, she's big, she's imposing. You don't want to mess with her. She's gruff. Um,
Yeah.
but certainly the way we've had her here, the way that she has been written in the past by Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner when she's shown up either in the Starfire mini or Harley Quinn or what have you, she's much softer. And the way Leah Williams writes her is much softer. I think your Sex in the City comparison is apt. And again, I agree with you. I think there is an audience for that. And yeah, would have again for that reason would have liked to have seen this continue so that I mean, unless DC is willing to commit to a long narrative for Power Girl, regardless of sales, they're never going to be able to differentiate her from Supergirl. They just won't. So
Yeah.
anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Metamorpho, the Element Man, issue #5, written by Al Ewing. Steve Lieber is the artist. Lee Lowridge on colors. Farron Delgado handles the letters. I don't know if I said, but Power Girl came in at number 11 for me, which might be a little bit on the low side. But once I got it got, yeah. Other than the last two, 13 and 14, everything was pretty good this week. It was tough to rank. Um, anyway, Metamorpho comes in at number 8 for me. I am enjoying this series. I don't have anything new to really add. It does have that late Silver Age, early Bronze Age feel, with the dialogue boxes seeming to break the fourth wall and speak directly to us. What are you expecting, reader? We have a great story for you. The Lieber art is gorgeous. It's just the comic is just fun. I continue to use that word to describe Metamorpho. It's a heck of a lot of fun. It doesn't take itself too seriously. You don't need to be reading anything else to dive into Metamorpho and enjoy it. You don't even need to have really read any previous issues of Metamorpho. Each of these issues are doing a pretty good job of standing on their own. So, what a fantastic job by Al Ewing. Anyway, anything to add, Rocky? I know this didn't make your top 5 either, but
No, it came in at number 8 for me too. I continue to enjoy this, and full props to uh, Al Ewing. I think he continues to do a good job. This is definitely more of a Silver Age feel with a modern day sensibility, as I've said before, and it works. It actually, I like this is DC has something for everybody, no matter what age of DC you like. There's a comic book for you, and there's definitely Metamorpho fits right in there. I think Al Ewing is. I, I'm sup- I'm surprised how good he is at writing humor. This is surprisingly funny. I wouldn't, I never, Al Ewing was always such a serious writer to me. I remember him writing like Thor, and I remember him writing all these sort of like, Al Ewing often delves, he's good at writing stories with very esoteric concepts and out there. Well, heck, he's writing Absolute Green Lantern. So, that's out there. This is very much, who would have thought he's writing Metamorpho, but this is such a different comic, and he pulls it off, and you can tell that he's enjoying writing this, and the this yeah, this series is a lot of fun, and, I think this would be a good trade, a good gift for somebody who likes humor, when this comes out inevitably as a trade. I think this would make a good gift for somebody who enjoys just self-contained fun and good humor, and, 'cause, I think one issue to go on this series, but yeah, no, it's well done.
All right, up next we have Harley Quinn number 50. This comes in at number 9 for me, written by Elliot Kalin. Mirka Andolfo handles the art in this particular issue. Triona Farrell on colors, Lucas Catoni on letters. Again, I'm not the biggest Harley Quinn fan, but I am really enjoying this. Um, it's just a lot of fun. Elliot Kalin doesn't take himself too seriously or take Harley Quinn too seriously. Her brain has sort of taken over the intelligent part of her brain, which the part that gives us Joker Harley Criminal Sanity, or the Harley Quinn that we get in Sean Gordon Murphy verse.
Mm,
Um, and it's funny because the world that Harley has established doesn't really lend itself to logic or making correct decisions anymore. Like her reputation, the situation she's put herself in. So when she goes to this planning party for a block party that her the Throat Cutter Hill is going to be putting on, and then supervillains attack, and the other people that are there at the meeting are hoping Harley can help, and she doesn't have a weapon, and they're like, "Wait, you don't have a weapon?" And it becomes this running gag because Harley always has a weapon. So again, it's just fun. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It's very light on continuity, and I think there's probably a particular subset of Harley fans that are really enjoying this. And Mirka Andolfo's a fantastic, fun-loving artist, so she's a great choice. Did you get a chance to read this? I know you
uh
haven't been enjoying Harley for a while, Rocky, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I did read it, and, I really like this, it's there's a potential with this Althea character, and, and, Althea, the Althea character sort of is a villain that is very frustrated. Althea is a villain here who is, I'm not sure, Althea is I think a woman, sort of like a gothic like gothic style sort of villain who seems to be in love with Harley Quinn and is so frustrated with her, but rather than emotionally come to terms with her feelings for Harley, would rather kill Harley because she's frustrated with Harley, and she hires Gun Bunny and Mayfly to take out Harley Quinn, and that's the central conceit of the story. And you never mentioned the most important first appearance in the year, Jace. The first appearance of Harley Quinn's brain, the Quintellect.
Yeah, the Quintellect,
her
fantastic.
her her quintellect. I thought, well, that's actually kind of, I don't know if that's Elliot Collin, the writer, the quintellect. I think that was kind of funny. I laughed when I read that, and the look of this brain. It actually looks like a brain that looks like Harley Quinn, and so Curtis to Marco Andolfo here. It clearly had a lot of fun rendering all these images. Um, it's weird. I don't. While there's I don't find Andolfo's art to be particularly I don't find it to be sexy. I don't find it to be, sexual enough for a Harley Quinn comic, which is really odd. It didn't, hasn't, so even though it's really good, there's a lot of backgrounds, a lot of, like, I mean, it's good. It's really good art. It just doesn't feel, Harley Quinn enough for me. Mind you, this hasn't the art on this title hasn't been particularly what I would, I guess I'm a Pyrian fanboy. I actually think this. Uh, I'm looking forward to these characters, particularly Althea. I mean, Althea, Gun Bunny, Mayfly, Harley Quinn. These are characters that are gorgeous characters when rendered a particular style. I'm talking as with a bias here. I'm a Purient fanboy, and it's just it's neither the cover art, or the interiors sexualize these characters enough. And I know that's an odd thing to say, but I realize there's different audiences for Harley Quinn, but this is my bias. There's clearly an audience for this. Marco Andolfo has a strong following out there, and I hope that uh, you know that being the artist in this interior, that it brings more readership to Harley Quinn. Notwithstanding my bias, but I am who I am.
Fantastic. Well said. Uh, all right. Up next, a book that makes my top three comes in at number 4 for you. It's Superman number 25, written by Joshua Williamson. Multiple artists here. We have Jamal Campbell, we have Eddie Barrows, we have Iber Ferreira, and Dan Mora. So Jamal Campbell's, pretty much handling his own, um, including the colors on his pages. Then we've got Dan Mora handling his own, and being colored, handling his own pencils and being colored by Alejandro Sanchez. Then you have Eddie Barrows, who's having Iber Ferreira ink him, and then Alejandro Sanchez on color. So kind of 3 different processes for the different artists here. Letters are by Dave Sharp. It is a little bit of an extended issue, 28 pages. Um, Interesting that the cover, like the main cover, milestone 25th issue here, legacy number 868. I love that they're putting the legacy, DC starting to put the legacy numbers on their books. And a wraparound cover, and Perry, Metropolis has spoken, Perry White wins, and we see kind of a montage cover with a lot of the characters that have shown up in the run before. We've got Silver Banshee kissing Jimmy Olsen. We know that they're in um, a bit of a relationship. We have is she Moonlight Rider? I can't remember the name of that.
Uh,
Marilyn Moonlight or something.
Maryland
Yeah,
Moonlight. Yeah.
yeah. And we've got Supergirl, we've got Superwoman, Lois Lane, we've got Luthor in his old school armor, fighting Superman, and then we've got villains on the other side: Mercy, Doomsday, Graft, um, Parasites there, Lobo, um, Brainiac in the background. The guy with the chains, I can't remember his name.
The Chained. I
Unchained.
think it's the
Yeah,
Chained, the Unchained.
Chained. Yeah, yeah. He doesn't show up. I was a little surprised he didn't make an appearance here. But what's interesting is, sometimes we complain about covers not having anything to do with what's going on in the book. It's like, man, you got all these cool people on the cover, but other than Superman, Superwoman, and Lex and Mercy, none of them actually show up in the title. Um, and the big headline of Perry White wins, and Perry's not even doesn't show up for not even a single panel. But it's a landslide victory for the former newspaper chief as the mayor here. But it does advance the story forward that Williamson has been telling, in terms of Lex being more of a hero, or more of a good guy, less of a bad guy. Um, it's a complete heel turn for Mercy. Come to find out, as Superman suspected all along from that very first issue, when LexCorp became Supercorp, and Lex went to prison for what he did to Manchester Black, that it was all part of a Luthor plot. But what Luthor didn't plan on was the attack of Brainiac, having amnesia, and genuinely and legitimately becoming a better person. It wasn't, faked or what have you. And when Mercy realizes that, that's when she lets loose this um, Lex clone, this XL, who I guess is in some way, I don't know if he's got a Kryptonian physiology or something, but he's in some way has superpowers. But Lex had told Mercy not to use XL at all, because he was flawed, and we see that in this issue. When he's fighting Superman, he starts to turn into almost a Bizarro like Lex, just in terms of the way he looks, skin turning white, and starting to look inhuman. Not in terms of, hey, he's a Bizarro Lex, he's the opposite of Lex, he's actually a good guy. No, and the original Lex even says, this is why I told you not to let him out. He's got the same flaw of when I tried to create a Superman clone. It's just not going to work. And it's a Lex that doesn't have any inhibitions whatsoever, no hesitation to kill, to do whatever it takes uh, to put down Superman, and because of that, we have the real Lex Luthor actually kills him, and Superman is not real happy about that because it's a brutal scene where the original Lex in his Lex armor like literally blows the head off of this Lex clone. Uh, I have mixed feelings about it. Like if you want us to believe that Lex is a good guy, but he's regained some of his memories. Maybe he's not as you know warm and cuddly as he would have been had he not regained those memories. But he's also Lex, right? He's incredibly intelligent, and he's always going to do things that make sense to and coincide with his logic. And in his mind, he even tells Superman this when Superman says, "You killed him." He said, "Well, he would have killed me, and he would have killed my daughter, and he would have killed you, and every single person in Metropolis. He was broken, and he was never going to stop. This was the logical thing to do." And in Lex's mind, he wasn't really human. He wasn't really a person. He was just a clone. And this is maybe the only time I can remember that I sort of agree with Lex more than I agree with Superman here.
Yeah.
Like this wasn't really a real person. It was a construct. It was a clone. Now, just because it's made out of flesh and blood instead of uh, robotic. Let's say that it had been an android, and the only way to stop it would have been to blow off its head. Then is Superman upset? So what are we really talking about here? Are we saying that, well, it's something like religious, like he had a soul, it was a living being, so you shouldn't have killed it? Like, I don't get that. It was only alive or active, let's say. Let's not even use the term alive. It was only active for a few hours, and in that time, all it did was try to kill people and destroy property. So I sort of agree with Lex Luthor here. This had to be done. This thing had to be destroyed. Um, Now the argument could be made that, well, you didn't give Superman a chance to stop it any other way, non-lethal um, means, but you know it is what it is. I love the moral conundrum there. And before we even get any resolution, Superman tells Lois, "Hey, Superwoman, you oversee the cleanup of this mess. I'm going to take Luthor to Stryker's Island," um, and she can't do anything because she's lost her powers. Which, I mean, I knew Lois wasn't going to keep the superpowers forever, but I will admit to wanting her to have them for a little bit longer. Not a big fan of seeing her face all beaten up and swollen right there. Um, and yeah, we didn't. I mean, I think Williamson did a good job. We did get some quiet moments and got to see them sneak off and share the joy of having the abilities. But I wish it would have lasted longer to the point where it kind of felt more normal, if you know what I mean, like more just kind of everyday. Um, because it was like, yeah, they did sneak off and have those quiet moments, but they made a choice, if you recall, to sneak off and have those quiet moments. It would have been nice to have them have quiet moments just because this was the new norm with both of them having powers, and they're just having a quiet moment because it's a quiet moment. It's not necessarily purposeful, but it could have been impactful and interesting to me. Um, but again, I get it. There's other things coming. A lot of, again, if you read that article and interview that I did recently that came out on Superman Day, um, yeah, they all the writers mentioned big plans coming in the fall, big events coming in the fall. So I'm sure this choice to take Lois's powers away had a little bit more to do with that, the timing and what have you. We know we have Dan Slott's Superman Unlimited coming up, where the Daily Planet is going to go global, um, and Lois, maybe it doesn't really make sense for that narrative for her to have the abilities and the powers. So I understand it, even if I'm a little bit disappointed. So great issue. The art, every one of these artists knocks it out of the park. It's hard to say which pages I like the most. Um, I mean, the Eber Ferreira pages, especially the ones that are um, kind of colored with just the barest amount of color. The kind of the flashbacks with Mercy and Lex are gorgeous. Jamal Campbell's pages early on to kick off the story are very lush, and then of course the action pages at the end with all the fighting and what have you, by Dan Mora are fantastic as well. Um, yeah, every one of these guys just absolutely killed it on the art. It's gorgeous. I mean, I'm not normally a fan of having three different art styles on a book, but there are sort of three separate and distinct acts here, and they split up the artists. You know, we get Jamal Campbell doing the early part, a lot of it's flashback, and we get the middle part where shit hits the fan, so to speak, with by Eber Frere, and then we finish up with the big fight with Dan Morris. So, like, man, there's nothing not to like about this book. Again, nitpick of Lois losing her powers, but I mean that's more of a plot thing rather than execution. And this book was just executed really, really well. What a fantastic issue. Um, yeah, I can't wait for more. It's been a long time since I've been this excited about Superman. Like every Superman book is kicking ass, whether it be Absolute Superman, Action Comics, which I can't wait for Action Comics to see for the
Yeah.
first time Clark learn how to use his powers. That's going to be in the hands of Mark Wade. Oh my God, it's going to be so good. And Joshua Williamson continue to just kick ass on Superman. Like man, it's hard to even think back to those dark, dark days where all the Superman titles sucked when one writer was writing them all, including the way Superman was handled in Justice League, and none of it worked, and it was just a chore to read. Um, and now we've got three different writers, and again, I haven't read much of Dan Slott's stuff other than the free comic book day issue so far. Um, but from what Dan's told me, man, I can't wait to get my hands on it. It's a good time to be a Superman fan. That's a great time to be a Superman fan.
Yes, it
So,
is.
all right, Rocky, in your top three, or in your top five rather, what did you think?
I what stands out for me is I like Mercy's character arc here. There's something so tragic about Mercy. She's always loved Lex Luthor, and she finally obtains that love, but she stumbles upon it by accident because it's revealed that the whole Supercore plotline that the very first story arc of Joshua Williamson, the Supercore, that really was. To the surprise of no one, that yeah, that was all just some master plan by Lex. That was all planned. He planned it right down to Superman becoming the head of the Supercorps. He planned all of it. He planned on being sent to jail. He planned on befriending Superman. He anticipated all of it. What he did not anticipate on was having his mind scrambled at the end of that Brainiac arc, which basically pacified him. And it made him a more peaceful Lex, a Lex that was more introspective, that was more self-aware of his flaws. And but it also made him more feeling, more empathetic, and by doing so, um, he was more, well, dare I say, perhaps had the capacity more to love, and by doing so, he saw the love of Mercy, and so they had a relationship. But unfortunately, it's when you change some aspect of yourself, and for that was enough to have, he saw Mercy for who she for the beautiful woman that he saw or was attracted to at some level, but she was no longer attracted to him because what she was attracted to, Mercy really was attracted to the narcissistic Lex, to the evil Lex, to the heartless Lex. That's who she really was found attractive, not this peace loving guy. It reminded me of that show Severance, where you have your work mind and you got your personal mind, where they're separated in that Netflix series. That's really good. How
Apple
you have,
TV.
oh, Apple TV, yeah, and it's very fascinating. It's almost like Mercy. There really are two different versions of Lex here, and I like the fact that not only did she experience that with just one Lex, but it's really from a narrative point of view. Obviously, it's slammed home with having two Lexes, and she likes this XL Lex because he's the evil one. He's the one that she's cheering for because she's just as much a control freak as Lex is. That's the interesting thing about Mercy, and that's what is it they say? We don't attract what we want; we attract who we are. Mercy, there's a reason why she loves Lex Luthor. They have more in common than she thinks. So suddenly you get this more pacified Lex Luthor, and she's not interested in him at all, and is basically was manipulating him, just like Superman always likes, or Lex always likes to manipulate everybody. But in any event, Yeah, just a really good series, just a really great story, and the ending with I'm interested with the cliffhanger. Super Lois Lane losing her Superwoman losing her powers. Where did they go? Where did they go? I'm curious about that. I'm not sure what's going to happen next. I haven't, I know sometimes we get previews. I have not read ahead, so Superman is firing on all cylinders. Great series, and yeah, a really great job. Despite the fact that we got three different artists, but all fantastic combined to make a great comic.
Yeah, normally you're the one reading ahead. I've been reading ahead a little bit lately. That being said, the next issue of Superman is not in our press previews yet, so I haven't had a chance
Oh,
to read
okay.
it. But Joshua Williamson has hinted that yeah, there's some big stuff to come in Superman 26. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But if you didn't read that article, one thing that I did want to mention is one of the questions somebody asked was Zod. You know, how is Zod going to be a threat if he doesn't have superpowers? And we never got confirmation that Lois's powers were Zod's powers. If they were, then maybe they reverted back to him, or maybe they got passed on to somebody else, or maybe they're not Zod's powers at all. But I loved Joshua Williamson's answer, which was Zod was a huge threat on Krypton when he had no superpowers. He went to the Phantom Zone. He was a huge threat. He didn't have any powers in the Phantom Zone. Zod doesn't need powers to be scary. And Josh's argument is he kind of doesn't have the crutch of powers to rely on. He's even arguably more dangerous, more conniving, more manipulative, uh, more evil, if you will, because he has to be. He doesn't have the superhuman abilities to fall back on. And I love that answer from Josh. So anyway, speaking of great Superman stories, we have Superman: The Last Days of Lex Luthor, issue number 3, finishing up this series. Written by Mark Waid, pencils by Brian Hitch, inks by Kevin Nolan, colors by David Barron, letters by Richard Starkins and Tyler Smith. This comes in my top 3, comes in your top 5. I'll let you go first. What are your thoughts on this story?
Uh, yeah, this was uh I got to give full props to Mark Waid on this. To it doesn't surprise me that this was a fan just a great ending to this story. The idea that, Superman goes out of his way to try to save Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor is dying, and Superman over the course of the last two issues, this is a three-issue series. Over the course of the last two issues, Superman has been doing everything he can, traveling to the past, the future, visiting every hero, every scientist he can in the DC universe to try to find a cure to save Lex Luthor's life, much to the chagrin of the world that is thinking, well, why don't you just let him die for God's sakes? But Superman is Superman, and Superman he remembers Lex Luthor embodies Superman's perceived failure because he's the one person that Superman feels he's never been able to reach. And it's personal to Superman because as a young Clark Kent, he failed to adequately befriend Lex Luthor, and he's always felt partly responsible for the evil man and the misguided man that Lex Luthor has become. And what Mark Waid has done so well over the previous three issues, and it really shines through in this third issue, is the characterization and the dialogue and the conversation between Lex and Superman. It's revealed that Brainiac set up everything. Brainiac arranged it so Lex was in an accident that altered his cells to essentially leech Superman's ability to process solar energy. And so that has the cumulative effect of not only taking away or slowly taking away Superman's powers, but slowly killing Lex Luthor. And, in Brainiac's way of thinking, Brainiac figures he was doing Lex Luthor a favor because, you want Superman to lose his powers and, well, okay, you're dying as well. But so in Brainiac's twisted mind, he figures that this is something that, Lex should be proud of. But that's not the case. And what's so interesting here is what Lex has discovered throughout the previous two issues. So Lex has been so frustrated, and he's slowly been it's been broken down. As much as he doesn't want to like Superman, and he can't help but at some point respect Superman reluctantly. At one point, Lex Luthor even yells at Brainiac in this issue. Damn you! One of the reasons why I hate you, Brainiac, is because you made me almost become a friend again to Superman. I mean, drives him crazy. And but what works so well here is despite everything, Superman never gives up hope on anybody. Superman believes in the goodness of all people, even Lex Luthor. Superman never gives up, and Superman goes so far that Lex Luthor can see that, and throughout all the machinations that take place in this issue, so many things happen that that Lex Luthor and Superman, they're down and out, and they work together. And Lex Luthor basically has the plan that he reveals to Superman ultimately, that the only way to get out of this, to defeat Brainiac, is for me to die. I got to get your powers back, but I'm gonna die. But you got to get your powers back to save the day, and I'm gonna die. That's the way it's got to be now. And this is my choice. I'm making it. This is the way it's got to be. And in typical Superman fashion, Superman finds a way to save Lex's life and ultimately defeat Brainiac and win the day. But he pays a price for it. Superman loses his powers, but he gives his powers to Lex Luthor, even though he loses the powers himself. But it saves Luthor's life. And that's the sacrifice that Superman's willing to make, to even give his arch nemesis superpowers. Are you crazy, Superman? Why are you doing that? But in the aftermath, and as there's a red sun explosion, Lex Luthor does something. It is revealed at the end, a hell of an ending, where Lex Luthor does something you would never expect him to do, and he actually ends up saving Superman's life, and whispers to him, "Don't you tell anyone," as a which I think works so well. I love the ending. It's basically Lex Luthor sort of abandoning his narcissism. Normally, if Lex Luthor ever got one up on Superman, he'd want to take credit for it. He'd want the world to know I beat Superman, or I had to save Superman. But even at the end, his narcissism is aside, his arrogance is aside. He saves Superman, and now we don't know if he dies or not, you know. But I just really love the ending here. That in the end, there was a kind of redemption, that relationship that Clark always wanted with Lex, feeling that he failed him, that there was some redemption in the end. And I thought it worked so well. And this really, really exemplifies the title to this series, Superman: The Last Days of Lex Luthor, because this genuinely is the last days of Lex Luthor. He may or may not be alive at the end, but that's not important. What's more important is the message, and the fact that never giving up on somebody, no matter how bad they are, always having hope for them, that in the end they can find redemption, and that kindness and love. I mean, hell, this could be a Wonder Woman tale. It's written so well. If you think in terms of the themes you normally find in Wonder Woman, but for Superman, it works equally as well. And the visuals here by Brian Hitch are absolutely spectacular, fantastic. There's so many nuances and ins and outs on the plot itself. I didn't go into that. This really is about the relationship between Superman and Lex, and this is frankly a must read for anybody who truly wants to understand the relationship between Superman and Lex Luthor. This is a series you want to read. This is a gift when this comes out in hardcover, and you know somebody who's a Superman fan. This is the series that you want to buy them. In my opinion, I think it's fantastic. And Mark Waid, I think this surpasses his Superman Birthright, which I know he takes a lot of pride in, but I think this is even better than that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. This is and this is saying something because Mark Waid has written some fantastic Superman stories over the year, but I think this is his best Superman story he's ever written. Um, and I give a lot of credit to Brian Hitch too. Now, don't get me wrong, nobody's ever going to mistake Brian Hitch's art and style, and his more cinematic and kind of panoramic layouts for Kurt Swan. Right, Kurt Swan is one of the best, most recognized Superman artists ever. But there's a classic feel to Swan's art and the way he depicts Superman, and there's a very classic feel to the way Brian Hitch draws Superman and in this issue, and Lex for that matter. And you're 100% correct that this entire story is all about the relationship between the two, and that harkens back to kind of those classic late 70s, early 80s era Superman stories as well. A lot of them drawn by Kurt Swan. So I got such a Kurt Swan classic Superman vibe from this story, um, and harkening back to even stories of Superboy, where him and Lex were, knew each other as teenagers and were, rivals but friends, and all like these versions of this character, um, of these characters are extensions of that, right? Are extensions of Mark Waid having read and enjoyed that as well. And so, yeah, maybe this doesn't, make sense in terms of lining up with, modern continuity really, really well, but that doesn't matter because the story stands on its own and really harkens back to that, and speaks to the, why Superman feels like he's failed Lex. Um, and maybe he didn't fail Lex in the end. Maybe he, through example, when it finally came down to it, Lex saves Superman's life at the cost of his own. I didn't think that was ambiguous at all. Um, when you look at that final panel with that page there, you notice when Superman's rolling on the ground, there's bones in the air there. There's a skeleton in the air. And
You're
I take that
right.
to
You're
be,
right. I
yeah,
stand corrected.
yeah.
You're right. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that explosion, that red sun explosion, radiation, what have you, it did kill Lex. So he is gone. Um, and yeah, so maybe Superman, maybe that's, even though he doesn't have, Superman doesn't have his powers at the end of the story, um, that maybe that's okay because he did the one thing that he spent the entire story trying to do, which was to save Lex. And even though he didn't necessarily save him physically, he may have saved him spiritually. In that he convinced Lex to give his life for someone else, and there's no more Superman like act that you can do. And if you can have Lex Luthor, make that decision in his final moments, like what a testament to who Superman is, the spirit of Superman, and what have you. And really, that sums up the entire story here. You can have just a fantastically entertaining story with gorgeous art, and what have you, but the deeper meaning um, of Superman finally being able to reach Lex. And probably a situation where, yeah, Superman's not happy that he doesn't have his powers and that he won't be able to help those in need, the way he's been able to do in the past. He trusts his fellow Justice Leaguers to do so. Um, and that's a way to go out, right? Like if you're going to retire as a superhero, um, you go out on a big win like that, and that's certainly a big win. So, this is just fantastic. It goes to what I was saying before about what a absolute wealth of great Superman stories that we have right now. And this one's just par for the course. I agree with you. Like having this in a collected edition, fantastic gift for any Superman fan. All right. Up next, last book we're going to talk about in detail. We're actually not going to talk about very much. It's Flash number 20, Black Moon Rising, Part 1, written by Simon Spurrier, art by Vrasko Gregev, colors by Matt Herms, lettered by Hassan Otsman Elhau. This comes in at number 13 for me. Would have been last had it not been for Green Lantern Dark. Just when you think Cy Spurrier is gonna make things a little easier to understand, and kind of has an idea of who Wally is and lean into the family feel, we lean back into the scientific gobbledygook. The concepts are interesting and fun. Um, I'm still not 100% clear on how Wally's able to create duplicates of himself. But basically, in this story, what we've been told is Wally's got hundreds, if not thousands, of duplicates of himself, and they're fighting against some evil entity, the same entity that was possessing Eclipso and now has captured Roxy, or Foxy rather,
Yeah.
the West's family dog, who's really um, like this sort of celestial universal being that has all kinds of powers. So this entity that was, and I freely admit I could have this all wrong because it's not that easy to understand exactly what's going on, but it
So far, I'm
appears
agreeing with you what you're
the
saying.
way, yeah,
Yeah.
the way I took it was, yeah, this being has been, that is this dog, it's taken the form of this dog, has been captured by the entity that affected Eclipso and is now using his powers and is trying to do something to the moon. We don't know what. And all these hundreds, if not thousands, of clones or shards of Wally are trying to stop it in some
Yeah.
way. Um, but it's messy. The art isn't particularly good. The dialogue is overwrought. Like we've taken so many. The series has been inconsistent. Typically, I haven't enjoyed it very much, but at times it feels like Cy Spurrier almost gets there, and now it feels like like he almost reached the top of the hill, almost climbed the stairs. Now he's fallen all the way back to the bottom, and we have this really inscrutable story just kicking off here with a bunch of scientific gobbledygook again, just like we had in that first issue. Um, and yeah, it was a shorter read. I couldn't wait for it to be over. Again, like interesting ideas, like an army of Wally West Flashes that are shards of each other that are slightly different, and different things happen when they run into each other at full speed and whatever. There's some interesting concepts here, but the execution just falls down completely, and the scripting is not to my liking. So, yeah, I did not like this at all, not
Yeah.
even a little bit. So,
Um, yeah, I would add that, the shards of Wally, when I heard that they're shards of Wally West, and I think the shards are from divergent timelines that diverted, and somehow they're all joining Wally West. There's already 2 Wallys to begin with in a way that I didn't really understand. Now there's thousands of them that keep getting killed and keep coming back to fight this combination of Eclipso's mind and Foxy, who is the dog who was an offspring. Basically, the Speed Force gave birth to an entity that took over Foxy the dog that merged with Eclipso, and apparently now they want to take the moon somewhere, and now suddenly the only way to stop it, again, I think nonsensically, is Wally decides he's going to get a bunch of Wally Wests from divergent timelines to fight them. Why? Why? You have a Speed Force family. Why not use your fellow Speed Force family? Why convolute the narrative like this? It just doesn't make any sense. In any event, I think a shard, I think of a shart. When you go to fart, but something else comes out instead and it liquefies, that's a shart. This is like sharts of Wally West. That's what this. So I think there's a misspelling there. It's not a shard. It's sharts is what it is. But yeah, I don't. I wish I could say that there was a point here. Even coming up with the name for this villain is Heliophagia. That there's every single page has a series of has some aspect of a dialogue that goes out of its way to be confusing and esoteric and completely unnecessary and pulls me out of the narrative. I think this is just it's just a uh like you said, I suppose it's I you know what? If I'm truthful, this isn't even a good story idea to me. I just it doesn't even feel like a good story idea. Sadly, this is part 1 of Bad Moon Rising, and like why do they want like I just I just don't get it. This is yeah, I don't know. This is gonna. I guess he's on this title until September. But I don't understand this. I still don't understand why we needed 2 Wally Wests to begin with. Still doesn't make sense. And then at some point in the end here, the 2 Wallies want to merge together to create an explosion to destroy this Heliophage bad guy. But you already have like 100 flashes already, so why do you have to merge with your how can you tell each other apart? And none of it makes any sense. And then they got these weird names for each other. It's just the thing is just a mess, and I'm just absolutely stunned that I'm just so surprised because this should this should this shouldn't be this confusing, but I guess it's not because I think we understand the gist of the story, but why? Like you said, it's a chore to read, and it doesn't read well, and all the voices sound the same. We got the kids sounding the same as Wally's. All the different characters sound the same. And it's just a hodgepodge of just craziness. But fortunately, I wish Cy Spurrier was in Calgary this weekend. I could maybe pick his brain, but he'd probably just give me a bitch slap, and I'd end up
yeah,
sharding. I'd end up
she'd be like,
sharding
"What?
myself.
Yeah, you said that it was my book was shart. Why would I listen to anything that you have to say?" Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely a little harsher. And remember what I said earlier? You don't have anything nice to say.
yeah.
Anything at all.
That's right.
Anyway,
I think
I am.
we skip Peacemaker Presents the
Oh,
Vigilante,
we
or
did. We
are we
did.
going to talk about that or not?
Yeah, yeah, we can't. I
I
mean,
I
it
don't have
didn't
much
make
to
either
say
of our
about
top five. But yeah, we should. I don't know how I ended up skipping that one, but yeah, let me get it up in front of me. Um, because yeah, there's two stories here. It's Peacemaker presents Vigilante, Eagly double feature number two, um, and both stories. James Gunn is credited as a story consultant, I guess you would say. So the first story is the Vigilante story, and Tim Seeley handles the writing duties on that. Art is by Mitch Gerrits, and then lettering by Pat Brosso. And then the Eagly, who he barely shows up, and it's like Rex Ogle writes that. Pencils and inks by Matteo Loli, colors by John Kalis, also lettered by Pat Brosso. I don't really have much to say. It's entertaining enough. Again, Vigilante is one of my favorite characters, but not this version of Vigilante, who's over the top, and I can see the humor in it. And it is cool to see Saber and Cannon, old classic Vigilante characters. I do enjoy the second story more. It reminds me of the Kyle Starks Peacemaker series that we read that we really enjoyed, and I can see the draw to this John Cena version of Peacemaker because he's not real bright, but that leads to a lot of humorous situations, and there's a lot of gratuitous violence that is funny in a lot of ways. So again, I can see the draw there. I thought the art was good in both. It's entertaining, and if I didn't have kind of a personal connection to Vigilante in terms of loving the Adrian Chase main universe Vigilante, um, the first story I'd probably enjoy more, but it's like, man, I'm getting this Adrian Chase version of Vigilante, who's kind of a dumbass, um, instead of the classic one that is one of my favorite all-time characters. Yeah, that doesn't necessarily make me happy. Um, but again, it's Mitch Gerrits on art, and the art's fantastic. So, but yeah, it's entertaining, and if you're a fan of James Gunn's sensibilities, if you're a fan of the Peacemaker TV show, if you're a fan of that version of Suicide Squad, you're gonna love this. You should absolutely be picking it up. I've never seen the Peacemaker TV show or that Suicide Squad movie, and again, my vigilante bias kind of means that this is not for me. But all that being said, I did still read it, and I just did still get enjoyment out of it. So, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on it?
I would just add that this is such a wonderfully well done representation of the Peacemaker series, of the Vigilante in the Peacemaker series by James Gunn. You could easily see the similarities. The humor is the same. Kudos to Tim Seeley and Rex Ogle. They've these stories, in my view, obviously the art's different, but the it these are the characters that are on the TV show. In fact, if they want to promote comics, they really should have when they show the season 2 of Peacemaker, they should actually have a little a TV connection that will take you to the DC all in website or whatever and give you these should be free. These comics, this series should be free and immediately available and made and advertised on the Peacemaker series because people I think this would pull people in and you never know, give it a shot because I know what the hell do I know about comic book marketing, but then I would legitimately say, what does DC and Marvel know about comic book marketing? Uh, in any event, I yeah, this is funny. This is funny, entertaining as hell. And God, if you guys enjoy the Peacemaker series, absolutely pick this up. Or wait a month, subscribe to the DC app there, and just and read it then, because I think these come out a month later or whatever. But this is entertaining. This is funny. Kudos to Tim Seeley and Rex Algo. They did a good job on this.
Before I get to the trades, as I frequently like to do when it comes to Flash, I go to Comic Book Roundup and look at the ratings. Now we know it debuted, around 8, 9. It was doing okay, and then it just week after week or month after month after month, it just slid down. It was just got worse and worse and worse in terms of how people rated it, um, until it kind of bottomed out right around issue 11, and then issue 12, which really the whole first 12 issues was all one story. Issue 12 had a bit of a bump, um, and then because it did wrap things up, and at least it was an ending, and we thought, okay, now we'll go somewhere different. And 13 wasn't hugely well received, but then a giant jump, right? So 11, I mentioned it bottomed out. That was a average score of 4.4 on a scale of 1 to 10. And then 12 jumped up to a 6.5. And then a little slip on 13 down to 5.8. But then, okay, now we're getting into the Wally West. It's the family. They're camping. Maybe Sicebreaker gets it. Went from a 5.8 on issue 13 up to an 8.4 on issue 14. And then it starts sliding down again. 7.8 on 15, 6.8 on 16. And now with 19, it dropped down to 5.4 for um, the last
Yeah.
part of the last arc, that Eclipso arc where Foxy got kidnapped and Entity took it over or
Yeah.
whatever. And I kind of expect when the reviews come in for 20 that it's going to go down below 5 again,
Yeah.
and be rivaling for the worst rated and be in that red zone, um, because this is back to the crap that people clearly didn't like.
Yeah,
So
and it's
it's
funny,
just,
the
yeah,
issues
it's
that you mentioned
frustrating.
got a higher rating are the ones where those stories were more grounded. They were more grounded, focusing more on the family, which is what people wanted. We were even talking about maybe telling people maybe to try to come back to the book. It looks like Cy Spurrier is righting the ship a little bit, going back to the characterization of focusing on the family. But instead, what he's done, he's gone completely esoteric again, and just all of a sudden, there's the family's gone, and they're just whatever the hell this is. Now he's focusing on on dogs and foxies and eclipsos and just multiple wallies, and it's just an absolute mess. And it's no surprise that it's this isn't even science fiction. This is science messy.
Yeah, science messy. Good way to put it. All right. Anyway, enough of that. Moving on to collections this week. 100 Bullets Book 2 trade paperback is out. I think it'll all get collected at one point. Brian Azzarello is the writer. Eduardo Riso on the art. And then we've got Batman Brave and the Bold Volume 2 Out of Darkness trade paperback, which collects the most recent Batman Brave and the Bold volume. One collects issues 1 through 3 and 6 through 9. We've got Dark Knights of Steel. There's two different Dark Knights of Steel hard cover trades, and this collects um, the Dark Knights of Steel 1 through 12, as well as Dark Knights of Steel Tales from the Three Kingdoms. So there's two, like I said, two different hardcovers, both deluxe editions, but one has a cover by Dan Mora, and one has a cover by Yasmin Putri. So whichever you prefer. I guess the direct market one has Dan Mora, and the other one has Yasmin Putri. And then there's a DC's Finest Superman Family, the Giant Turtle Man trade paperback, and this collects a bunch of stories about Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen, them getting powers, Perry White stories, just all sorts of Superman family character adjacent stories. It's 664 pages for $40. And again, it's called DC's Finest Superman Family, the Giant Turtle Man, and collects a bunch of those Superman family stories. Justice League Book 2, or JLA Book 2, I should say. This is the Grant Morrison run of JLA. This is collecting issues 10 through 23, as well as Annual 2, Justice or JLA Secret Files and Origins, New Year's Evil, Prometheus 1, JLA World Without Grown-Ups 1 and 2. So almost all Grant Morrison written, but there are a couple of issues in there written by Mark Waid. Then we've got Nightwing Rebirth Omnibus hardcover. This is that Tim Seeley run that kicked off Rebirth that I've mentioned many times here. This is 1,492 pages, so it's a tome for sure, and it collects 1 through 49 of Nightwing, as well as the Nightwing Rebirth #1 special and other tie-ins. You know, there's some Batgirl issues here, Batman issues, Batmoon Prelude to the Wedding, Nightwing versus Hush. There's a couple issues of Detective Comics, just a ton of stuff. I mean, like I said, almost 1,500 pages for $125. And then finally, the aforementioned Plastic Man No More from Christopher Cantwell, with art by Alex Linz, gets a hardcover which collects all 4 issues of that series from Cantwell. So a lot of great collections out this week if you are so inclined.
Yeah.
All right, moment of truth, Rocky. Tough to pick a book of the
It
week. Easy to pick a book of the week.
I got to tell you, my initial top five were from 5 to 1 was Green Lantern 22, Superman 25, Absolute Martian Manhunter, coming in at number 2, Superman: Last Days of Lex Luthor at 2, and Absolute Wonder Woman at number 1. But as much as I love Absolute Wonder Woman number 1, as we were talking about Superman: Last Days of Lex Luthor, I got to go with that. I got to go with that one because because I think it's more historic, and it's more reflective of just the overall history of Superman, and I think it's an evergreen. I think it's an instant evergreen title, and I think it's an instant classic, and it's Mark Waid at arguably his best. And you're right. I mean, you said it first. I never said the words, but I agree with you. It probably is Mark Waid's best Superman story. Um, that that I've read to date. I like it better. I wasn't a big fan of his Birthright, to be quite honest with you. Even though I know he quite. I remember Mark Waid's comments when he wrote Birthright. The reception wasn't as well received as he had hoped. He made the comment that he felt like he got his first appearance at Carnegie Hall, but nobody showed up. And but well, Mark, Mr. Waid, I hope people will appreciate Superman: Last Days of Lex Luthor for the gem that it actually is. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So number 5, Green Arrow for me. Number 4, Absolute Martian Manhunter. Number 3, Green Lantern 22. It was just so great. And then my number 1 and 2, um, Superman 25 and Superman: The Last Days of Lex Luthor. And I went back and forth, and I just couldn't decide. I couldn't pick between the two. I wasn't sure which one I was going to pick. But being that you picked The Last Days of Lex Luthor, that frees me up to pick Superman 25 as my book of the week. I mean, Superman: The Last Days of Lex Luthor definitely um, deserving. Well, I'll go with Superman 25 for a couple reasons, not just because you already picked Superman: Last Days of Lex Luthor, so that gets acknowledged as a book of the week, but it's sort of like what Joshua Williamson is doing in kind of the ongoing Superman title here is establishing new classics, right? And new interesting character dynamics between Lex and Superman, where Mark Waid is going back and with a backwards look, looking at the classic stories, many of them drawn by Kurt Swan, as I mentioned before, and celebrating that dynamic and that relationship and doing it in a fantastic way. And then we have Williamson in modern day, in modern continuity, um, giving us a new character dynamic for the two. I mean, that's just fantastic. Like, what incredible bookends, right, for the relationship of Lex and Superman. So I'll go with that. But you can't go wrong with either one. Everybody, again, one of the first question that I asked, like I said, I did that roundtable, and I didn't get to ask all the questions, and not all my questions were asked, but I did have the first, and I didn't do this purposefully, and I didn't say, hey, can you do the whatever. This is just the way the DCPR did it when they looked at all the questions. The first question that got asked was one of my questions, and the last question that got asked was my question. So the
Mhm.
first question that was asked was, do you feel that how go the Superman title, so goes DC? Um, and that was, yeah, everybody agreed with that basically, which
Yeah,
was really interesting, because I think that's 100% accurate, and I think the DC Superman titles are as good, if not better, than they've ever been, and DC feels as healthy and as strong from top to bottom as it's ever been. They're just doing really, really well right now. Knock on wood that it can last. And then my last question was, do you feel Superman is is how relevant is he? Basically, there's the whole idea of he's too old fashioned. He doesn't suit the modern storyteller. Blah blah blah. And everybody sort of agreed that no, he's sort of more relevant than ever and more needed than ever with his stories of unity and compassion and um, being an immigrant and what have you. And we could all do with a little more empathy these days. And he embodies all those values very, very well. So I say all that to say, how great is it that we are getting such fantastic Superman stories, from Absolute Superman to Superman Action Comics, soon to be Superman Unlimited, Superman Limited Series like this Lex Luthor, Last Days of Lex Luthor. It's a great time, like I said, to be a Superman fan. So hope you guys get a chance to pick up some of these books. And I did mention before that I've been reading ahead a little bit, and
mhm.
I have had a chance to read the next issue of Absolute Superman. Holy cow! Uh, Superman's going to have his work cut out for him. That's what I'll say. Absolute Superman is going to have his work cut out for him because the villains that Jason Aaron is crafting for him, um, the twist he's putting on these classic Superman villains, making them really formidable, really scary, really dangerous. Yeah, it's going to be it's going to be interesting to see, especially how a Superman that's not experienced with using all his powers and abilities, and is not familiar with these foes, how he's going to handle what they throw at him. It's going to be a good time. So, anyway, that does it for this episode. Everybody, appreciate you joining us. Don't forget to head over to Rocky's channel to check this out. If you're listening audio only, we're here every Wednesday. Comic Space Boom! Exclamation point! Ring that notification bell so you know when Rocky puts out new content. Like, comment, subscribe. You can also check out all the Comic Source content over on the Comic Source YouTube channel. Again, like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell so you know when new episodes drop. A couple of episodes coming out this week. And then obviously those indie spotlights that I'm a little behind on will be coming as well. And then don't forget, if you prefer to listen audio only while you're exercising or riding your bike or subway or what have you, all the content is available on the Comic Source audio feed. Just go to your favorite podcasting platform or app, do a search for the Comic Source, and subscribe. So once again, we want to thank everybody for joining us, and we will talk to you next time.
Catch you later.